We began this journey by looking at the commentary that Rashi has for the statement made in Bereshit 4:3 that Cain brought a mincha LaHashem, an offering to Hashem, mipri ha'adama, where the pasuk goes on to state, subsequent to the acceptance of Hevel's offering, that ve'el Cain ve'el minchato lo sha'a, God appears to have rejected the offering of Cain, to which, on the surface at least, and on account of the fact that no reason is given by the text, Rashi grapples with the rejection of Cain and his offering. Rashi provides us with two options. In the first, he paraphrases the Bereshit Rabbah that Cain's offering was min hagarua, somewhat substandard relative to the superlative descriptives that the text gives to Hevel's offering, which understandably resulted in that rejection. In answering one problem, it creates another, and that was, if from the very outset Cain brought a substandard offering, one that was garua, one that would be interpreted as an act of disrespect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, why then did Cain bother to bring such an offering? And then furthermore, when it was rejected, he becomes angry and depressed. To forewarn this difficulty, Rashi goes on to quote from the Medrash Tanchuma, and in doing so clarifies the garua component of Cain's offering. It was an offering from flax, produce that was high quality, of which Cain made a value judgment that he need not have offered the best of the best, but rather offered the leftovers, that which he most probably would not be able to sell on the market or its equivalent. After all is said and done, there still remains a shortcoming with this option, as it doesn't really explain why Cain was not able to accept responsibility for his mistake, and instead directs his anger at God. Clearly, Cain had miscalculated, and rather responding in anger, he should have at the very least rectified his mistake, resubmitted an offering that was not drawn from the poorest, the leftovers of his crops. Unless we are willing to entertain the possibility that there was a mental imbalance within Cain, an inability to place matters into their context, we are still left with the problem as to why Cain projected his anger at HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Vayicha LeCain Me'od, for his own miscalculation. As a result of this difficulty, Rashi proposes a second option, that the offering was not substandard in terms of quality, but substandard in terms of intent. For the first time we are involved with a relationship between man and God, and Cain appears to be somewhat indifferent and nonchalant regarding this relationship, which would at least explain Cain's anger. There was no overt attempt by Cain to be disrespectful. He did not bring a substandard offering in terms of content, and this brings us to the shortcoming of the second option, in light of the fact that there was a bona fide attempt on the part of Cain to interact with God by his offering of whatever he had at hand. True, it was low grade relative to Hevel's offering, and therefore it is somewhat puzzling why God actually rejected the offering of Cain. According to Rashi's first option, there was some justification for that rejection, because as much as Cain felt he had done nothing wrong, in actuality it was a substandard offering. Not so with the second option. So, in summary, what we have here is one option regarding Cain's offering, that it was substandard, although not with the intent to be disrespectful, but nevertheless the problem remains as to why Cain elected to bring the garua, a poor quality offering. We have option 2, where the offering was not garua, substandard, but what today would be deemed to be a lack of kavanah. He was indifferent, to which the question is, this would not necessarily justify God's rejection of such an offering, which brings us to the third stage in dealing with commentaries that Rashi has that involve multiple options, and that is the value judgment that Rashi makes in placing option 1 first, which is body language, that it, from the standpoint of Pshuto Shel Mikra, has more validity. Worded differently, the shortcomings of option 1 is less problematic than the shortcomings inherent in option 2. A mitigating fact with respect to Cain presenting to God an offering that was substandard is the role of the Yetzer Hara, a point that we touched upon earlier, when we noted God's response to Hevel and his counseling him regarding the way he should deal with the rejection of the offering, telling him that he has the ability to overcome, should he so desire, his Yetzer Hara. And therefore, the fact that Hevel brought a somewhat substandard korban could be theoretically attributed to that third component, the Yetzer Hara, which might have affected the decision-making of Cain in deluding himself that bringing a somewhat substandard offering was not problematic. Hence, the shortcoming inherent in option 1, that the offering was garua, is less problematic than the shortcoming inherent in option 2.